All right. Thank you to everyone for joining us wherever in the world you're joining us from. My name is Christina Dudley, and I will be your behind the scenes moderator. Today's session is a fun one. No developers were hurt in the creation of this content. We have two rock stars from Contentstack, Gal Oppenheimer. He is director of our solutions architect team. And we also have Chris McCann, who's director of enterprise sales. And with us, we have two fantastic partners. We have Kathy McKnight, who's VP of Strategy and Consulting at the Content Advisory, as well as Authentic, where we have JM Guthrie, who's Partner and Chief Customer Officer. Without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Kathy.
Great, thanks you so much. And thanks for having me participate in today's webinar. So as we said, we're talking about headless today, and no developers will get hurt in the process of this webinar. So one of the things about headless is, it's been around for a while. This is not a new thing, although so many people are treating it like it's, oh my gosh, it's revolutionary. We've never heard of this before, but it's reared its head a couple of times. And, just for clarity's sake, let's talk about what the definition of headless is, because I think there is some confusion, and we certainly tend to meld the definition as we need to, depending on the situation. But the true essence of headless is that it provides a way for a content author to have standalone place for the content. It's a content repository. So unto itself, there is no way to present the information. It doesn't have any design or display capabilities, and it delivers content through APIs. So where we see some confusion is what you hear about headless and decoupled, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they're not. As I said, headless, strictly a content repository. They have no innate mechanism to display the content, whereas a decoupled solution has both the content repository as well as the ability to present the information on whatever surface or device that is targeted, but that they can be used interchangeably. So, truly a decoupled system is not a headless solution. And one of the things, or a few of the things I think that why this has become such a hot topic right now across the organization. So we're not just talking about IT and developers liking headless. We're now starting to gain some concentration of interest from marketers and content creators and experience teams, as well as leadership, marketing leadership, because there's a little bit of something for everybody. So, and we'll get into a little bit more of this, but for marketing and experience teams, it means that they can commit wholeheartedly to content. They can focus on the words and the tone and the voice and the consistency of messaging, and they're not getting sidetracked by as they're creating it, how it looks and how it's going to appear in the different channels. So, really I need to have these, 50 words, but you know what, it really needs to have 6 or 7 shorter, take 6 or 7 words out. So let's condense it. And it's not optimized for the content and the message. When we think about developers, by having content outside of the delivery system, they can really focus on a stack and make it what they want to use, and they can optimize it and not be tied down to a specific language or platform as some of the more monolithic CMSs that sort of do everything force them to be. And then, of course, from a leadership perspective, headless allows a certain element of future proofing. So again, by separating the content from the delivery system, you're not losing something when you change your technology. Often a CMS, when you re-implement a CMS, you're up to 18 months getting back to where you started from at the implementation. With a headless CMS, your content is all protected. So no matter what's going on the delivery side, you can continue to deliver and whatnot. And when that new system is up and ready, you just flip the API and you start directing it there. So there's a level of comfort in that. And so that's why I'm thinking we're seeing more of a collective at the table. And Jam, I don't know about you, if you're seeing that kind of change in discussion and less technology being interested in this discussion. It's not just the IT and the developers, that you're getting the marketers and the CMOs involved in the conversation.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Kathy. it's from the very beginning of Authentic, our strategy has been to put the contributors first and to be thinking about how contribution of content, whether that's web content or images or different types of content assets, even like social and videos, how do contributors actually put that forward specific to their content management solution? And traditionally, that's obviously been a connected experience to the front end as well. And so with Headless, what we're seeing is an ability to think about that contribution experience, think about our marketers and content contributors and making their jobs more fluid and more unified as it pertains to contributing content, whether that's for a website or web application in a single page application fashion, whether that's a mobile experience or mobile application and more of what we're seeing in a progressive web application experience, or maybe that's just a social channel where we're pushing either content or video assets out, and being able to manage that centrally in a hub like Contentstack, and by making it as fast and efficient from a development perspective, has allowed our customers from a financial services, from a retail, manufacturing, B2B perspective, be able to deploy contribution and management of these different types of assets and content much more fluidly and effectively.
Yeah, and Jam, you bring up an interesting point there about you mentioned 3 or 4 different industries or verticals, and I think that's one of the things. Again, that's one of the factors driving towards Headless is this these complex types of organizations. So whether it's financial services or CPG or manufacturing, there are so many different moving parts, and our world, while physically not growing or shrinking, it's getting smaller yet larger at the same time, right? So we as organizations are no longer just thinking about our local markets. It's not about reaching out to the people within 100 kilometers or 100 miles around us. We have to think about how what we're sharing is going to impact a decision maker halfway around the world, because we're not limiting who sees what content. So there's a complexity to that. And I think the corporate complexity lends itself to Headless, because you can get together and create content and have it aligned and then leverage it for a more analogous presentation across the different regions, and having that common voice, which is I think a lot of places, a lot of organizations sort of fall on, is getting that tone in the voice and having that consistent type of message.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I would just add real quickly, Kathy, is just, we have all of these organizations that have made significant investments in legacy technology that's not going anywhere in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And they're in the midst of these huge digital transformations, but the need to surface content, to your point, consistently, or even functionality consistently across each of those outputs, and obviously different regions as well, is super important. And so a solution like Contentstack really does allow our customer partners to surface that content and functionality in context of the right users, and frankly in the new unified design and experience as well, much more quickly and effectively too. So another just great value.
Yeah, so that's the omni-channel intricacy, right? So that is being able to be nimble and dynamic, to be able to surface the content in whatever device, and the explosion of devices that's going on. It's amazing what's connected. I have no idea what's going to come to next. We have a friend who has a connected toothbrush, which is both terrifying and fascinating. I want to go out and buy one. But to really achieve omni-channel, which is one of the big drivers for Headless, because again, you're keeping that content separate from the delivery, so you're not having to take content out of the CMS or out of the DAM and put it in a different place so that it can be surfaced, because all of your content is residing in a single place. And that enables also to accommodate things like audience diversity, right? So when we think about we're becoming more mature consumers, and certainly over the last year or so, with the world events that have been transpired, it has thrust people into the digital world because they didn't have a choice. For all those people who, I don't want a computer and I don't want a smartphone and all of those things, I have one good friend who still insists on keeping his flip phone and only uses his computer for work. Well, guess what? he was forced into a situation because he lived in a small town and didn't, everything shut down. He had to move to digital, right? And this is what we're seeing. And quite frankly, it was a sink or swim for organizations. And those who hadn't really thought about audiences and the different needs and their different approaches, they scrambled and they had to move fast, because again, the increasing demand for content, right? We can't be dependent on what's worked in the past. We have to be able to accommodate and grow moving forward. So something like a headless solution, you've got the development flexibility, right? You're future proofing your build. It's scalable, and for those of us who are on the marketing or the business side of things, there's a less dependency on technology. We're not having to go to the IT team. I need to change this or I need to change that. We've got control of that. So there's a little bit of a line in the sand, which brings me to talking about the fact that while it sounds like we're making it headless, the panacea for all, it's not. There are things to consider, and it's not a solution that everybody should or needs to take on. We get that question a lot with our clients. It's like, everybody's talking about headless. Should we have a headless solution? Well, let's talk through a few criteria before you make that decision, because just because that old saying our parents used to say, well, if Billy jumped off a bridge, would you follow him? For me, it would depend on the bridge and what's underneath. But again, with deciding to go headless, what's your technology support look like internally? Headless, you're creating a level of complexity while taking one away from the marketing side. You've now got APIs to manage. You're now connecting the content to different solutions. There's more development. Yes, it allows you to be more nimble. It allows you to future-proof, but then that can add complexity because now you're a little more free in what you're adding. So you're not quite as containing the technology as necessary. This is not a slight against developers. As we mentioned, no developers were going to be hurt in this webinar, but developers are not marketers. So there needs to be a cooperation. More cooperation than often happens. We see silos just perpetuating continually across organizations. I don't believe those are going away anytime soon, but I do think there needs to be more permeability. I do think there needs to be more working together. And in the case of headless, because you're taking away that immediacy of seeing what content looks like as you're entering it, what it's going to look like on a mobile phone, what it's going to look like on a tablet or a screen or a fridge. There's a trust factor, and developers have to understand that just because they're holding the keys to the presentation, they are not the ones who need to decide on what that presentation is going to look like. That still needs to reside on the creative side. And JM, I don't know if you're seeing tension there. I know I've seen it where, IT sees headless and goes, woo, we're done with marketing.
We're done. Yeah. No, absolutely.
That cannot be the case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's obviously something that we've seen a lot of. And the reality is, especially in today's day of age, the expectation of our customers is that it is in context or personalized, certainly that it's pixel perfect from a look and feel perspective as you look at some of these bigger and greater brands. And so at Authentic, we've been working really hard in partnership with Contentstack around an accelerator that actually does allow the users to see it in context. And so the development upfront is pretty minimal, but it does give some ability to preview the output. And so whether that channel social or the refrigerator, like you mentioned, or a website, while that's not part of Contentstack necessarily, it's a great extension that allows the users to see that in context and not be reliant on developers to ultimately drive towards what the output of presentation is. And we've seen some real success there. And I think that's a big change and shift in Contentstack's success specific to having that in context or preview, that traditional what you see is what you get management feature that a lot of our users are, frankly, attuned to and expect today in the way that they contribute content or perform content management.
Yeah, and that is a fantastic addition. It keeps the true essence of headless and what Contentstack has to offer its organizations that they work with, its clients, but softens the blow, because I know there's a lot of people that we've worked with who, not using that viewer, they're like, because it's such a different way of thinking, right? It's turning it around in their heads to it's not about necessarily losing control. It's about producing better content. And, content is the differentiator for organizations. It's great that you have fantastic products or services or whatever it is, but you're competing against the next best experience, and the consistency from an omni-channel perspective. So again, when we're thinking about headless, it really facilitates that diversity of experience on a continuum, right? Being able to have your users pick up from their mobile phone to their desktop, back to another phone, maybe a tablet. If they're passing by, a screen in a public space that's able to read on their phone, and they, be able to target that way. Like it's truly creating that omni-channel presentation, not just multi-channel, which so many organizations are. So again, not for everybody. And Chris, I wonder, when you're talking to clients about headless and its pros and cons, and where it best suits and how it can facilitate and improve businesses, where are you seeing the best fit for clients? Like, are they the ones that are meeting all of the things, that we've talked about? Is omni-channel a driver? Why are they calling you guys up?
What we've heard over the last year, quite often, and with all the challenges that 2020 brought to organizations, is that we wish we had talked to you sooner.
Right.
And what Contentstack does, and I say this all the time, it's not that Contentstack does something differently than Adobe or Episerver or Sitecore. They'll get you there eventually. Contentstack just gets you there a lot faster. Contentstack, and we'll talk about this at the end, we make change and innovation your superpower, right? So instead of being reactive to market forces or circumstances, it allows for our clients to be proactive, or certainly there in minutes as opposed to days, weeks, months, because they have something sitting in the IT queue.
All right, so, great.
Yeah.
That's and I think that's one of the things, like, so here, tell us a little bit more about where you guys came from. But it's interesting, I'm so glad to hear you not afraid to mention others in the space. Many are, but you guys are different. You've come from a different space than the Adobes and the Sitecores of the world, and puts you in a unique position, I think.
Yeah, I feel, and I tell my team this all the time, I feel very privileged to work with Contentstack. We were developed for digital creators by digital creators. And we've essentially been trying to solve problems around digital content for over a decade now. And we finally have come to a point where we have a solution that we're super excited about, and the team has poured their hearts and souls into it over the years. And you can see on the bottom the progression. But recently, last year, we co-founded the MACH Alliance, M-A-C-H, with 2 other like-minded organizations. The MACH Alliance advocates for an open and best-of-breed enterprise technology ecosystem, right? So you have frameworks and architecture and a point of reference for organizations that are thinking about making the switch, and they're no longer our pioneers, or where it feels like a moonshot. There are hundreds of organizations that have now moved to this microservices-based, API-first, cloud-native, SaaS, and headless solution. And recently, and you mentioned omni-channel, we debuted as a strong performer in the Forrester Wave for Agile CMS. And it was noted that Contentstack has the strongest channel support in this evaluation. And we were ranked 3rd for current offering, highest among all headless vendors. And when they say channel support, they mean omni-channel. So being able to have one centralized hub for content and then distribute that right message at the right time to the right place, to the right audience. And what we've learned, and I've seen this, is that developers, to your point, Kathy, they don't love necessarily working on traditional CMSs because they did sign up for creative and technical problem-solving work, not for fixing typos and headlines. And when they do get requests to build new capabilities, a traditional or monolithic CMS doesn't leave them with much room for customization or innovation. And with 2 or 3 year timelines for bigger upgrades, workarounds are often the only option. But these workarounds in turn then limit their ability to upgrade even further, and they find themselves behind in terms of versioning. Business users don't necessarily like working like this either, because it slows them down to run content and template changes through an IT queue. And if they try to manage this on their own, they're forced to wrestle with HTML code that might break your system when it goes live. And they often feel like they're copying and pasting all day with little time to work creatively or strategically. And I'll show you on the next slide what that looks like for a technical team. it's frustrating for the technical folks to have to force existing technology to do things it was never intended to do. So instead of working around a single technology suite with Contentstack, you can create the ecosystem that you want, because we were built from the ground up to integrate with other technologies, to your point about future-proofing. So you can choose the best technologies for your business case or for your skill set and your preferences. And as a result, developers spend less time figuring out how to make old technology do what they want, which leaves more time for building new innovative capabilities. And I'll say this, it's the benefit of this sort of an architecture is that you're no longer tied where you have, spaghetti code where everything is so tightly coupled. And if there's a better commerce engine, if you find a better checkout or cart functionality, if you find that there's a better DAM out there, data asset management or PIM, or a better content management system than Contentstack, then you have an architecture and a philosophy organizationally which allows for you to swap out and find a product and an offering that better suits your needs, which forces SaaS companies like ours to continually innovate and stay ahead of the curve to stay relevant to those organizations. So companies that have done this successfully with Contentstack have these three things in common. They've cleared their digital experience backlog. They've allowed for their experts to be experts, and they've made innovation and change their superpower instead of a pain point. And
Yeah,
Gal is going to show this.
Yeah, and just before Gal jumps in with the demo, I love the fact that one of the things I love about Headless is that it keeps not only the developer and the IT team internally on point, because it's no longer, kickback. We just made a $2 million, $6 million investment in insert technology here. I'm good for a while. I just need to keep the lights on and, moving on. It keeps them on point to have to say, okay, I need to understand what the business objectives are. I need to understand where we're going, what our targets are, and how do I best facilitate getting there? It's no longer, well, I can't do that because the platform doesn't allow it. Well, you know what? Go find one that does. And on the flip side, it keeps vendors on their toes. While, traditionally, you guys have been way ahead of adoption curve. Like you've got functionality and capabilities way beyond marketers only dream of being able to adopt them. But this keeps you on point to be able to, keep in pace and be able to enable the leveraging of those. And it's not like, oh, sorry, yeah, it's because of the integration. No. You need to be able to work with content and APIs from anywhere. And I think, Gal, you're going to step in now and share your screen and show the demo.
And that's a great point where Gal does that. It's no one's ever been promoted necessarily from moving from version 14.1 to 14.2. Right? They've been promoted because they've adopted this, where they've made change their superpower and innovation.
Awesome. I think I need you to stop sharing so I can take over.
All right.
Cool. Awesome. Let me share my screen. Cool. Can you guys see my screen?
You can.
Awesome. So I personally find that demos can be a little boring, even though I'm giving one. So instead of giving you guys like a long demo of here's 30 things to do on our platform, we've cut it down to just about 8 minutes or so. We're going to show you 3 really cool things in a platform, and we're going to keep it fun. So you see here, I have the same website on a mobile view as well as on a web view. And this mobile view is actually my iPhone, so you can see it moving up and down as I'm navigating. And we're going to start with a bottle of wine. Wine is super important to the Contentstack culture. It's really baked into our DNA. So what we've built here is a recipe website that instead of searching for a recipe, saying like, I want to cook chicken tonight, you start with a bottle of wine. And the best part about that, it means I get to keep a bottle of wine, which you can't see very well because of my virtual background. I get to keep a bottle of wine on my desk. So let me scan the barcode and we'll see what I am drinking.
And do we know why wine is so darn important at Contentstack?
I don't know, Chris, why don't you share?
And when I first joined, I was looking for a swag bag, like a backpack, a water bottle, et cetera. And they're like, no, we drink wine here. And 2 of our co-founders, Neha and Matthew, are both certified sommeliers. So we've had to ramp up the wine game pretty significantly as consumers.
Yep. And so you can see here, I'm drinking an awesome bottle of white, which I will not try and pronounce because I will butcher it, as well as sort of the recipes it recommends for me. To make it easier to see, I'm going to quickly jump over to the web view just because it's a little bit bigger and scan that same bottle's barcode. You can see here the different items. So all of this data is coming from Contentstack, and we'll show you what that looks like in a moment. We've built in some really cool filtering, so I can look for like easy or medium strength recipes. I can filter based on allergens. This is something that I wish, honestly, more recipe sites had, where I can say like, hey, I'm allergic to milk, and it'll pull out any items that have milk in it and stuff like that. And all this data will show you how it's managed in the CMS. We also have personalization actually built into this. So if I had been using a site for a very long time, behind the scenes, the system would put me into different categories of users. I built a quick switcher just to make it faster and easier for demos. I can see like what would the search results be for a work from home parent, or what might it be for someone who's a hipster and like they like to cook
vegan tofu scramble for their kids. They must be in California as well.
Yep, exactly. So like, for example, if you were a more traditional cook, you're cooking long stews that are 60 minutes or longer of cook time. So all this is coming into the system very, very cool and simple from a management perspective. Let's take a look at sort of what it's like actually managing sort of a normal page, a landing page. So we'll go over to our homepage. You can see here, there's a lot of really cool content on it. Let's say I want to add a new recipe to this page. I can just click this edit button and jump straight into this page. And sort of at the heart of the experience here is this feature called modular blocks. Now let's actually break down your page into different building blocks. Think of them like Lego pieces. So I can go in, let's say I want to add one of these blocks. I can go in, I can drop this right here above the products, fill in some content for it. And what do you know? It happens to remember what I want to fill in from the last time I did this demo, which makes it fast to add the content. We'll add a cookie in, and let's add sort of the recipe details right in here. When I'm done, I can save my change. And you can see behind the scene, the page is automatically refreshing itself. So if I come back in here, you can now see this new cookie recipe. I can drop this in. What do you think? What do you think, Chris? How does this look right now?
Cool, but can we change the layout so that they don't look so stacked?
Yeah, definitely. So in Contentstack, you can very easily control content and design. But unlike a more traditional CMS, I'm not coming in here and dragging elements around and trying to make sure it pins correctly to the left or the right. You can just actually expose that same functionality. So I can go right in here. I can have the text be on the left side through a simple drop down. If I want to add an animation, I can say, let's say we'll do a fade from the left. Let me quickly scroll up so we'll see that experience, and now click save. So now again, it's publishing in the background. If I come down, you can now see that this one slides in from the left like that. Hopefully that went over the zoom, as well as the content's been pushed, so it's no longer as stacked as it was before. Pretty cool from that layout experience. And the content here can come from Contentstack. It can come from other systems like a digital asset manager. We actually have all the pricing and the add to cart functionalities coming from a commerce platform in this. We're not going to dive into all of those just to keep simple, but what's great is that whole management experience will come from within Contentstack directly. So what we've done here is I was looking at my changes live, like they're sort of being previewed instantly. But let's say I was packaging up a bunch of changes for an upcoming holiday, and I wanted to set up a meeting to review this with maybe Chris and our manager together. What I can do in publishing content is I can actually choose where I want to publish my content to. Is I can set up to a specific environment, or even set up an environment for a specific project. It's also really cool in Contentstack where if I need to publish it to multiple locations, I can actually send it to all of them at once from one system. So I don't need to be cutting and pasting all the different elements. And I can also schedule publishing in the future. And that's really cool from a usability perspective. But sometimes I may want to actually be making changes to content while I'm looking at the page instead of jumping back and forth between those two views. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to the recipe page and show you what that looks like. So right here, you can see I actually have sort of the editor directly in line alongside my recipe. And this is one of my favorite recipes we have on the site. It's actually, I have cooked it in real life. It is good, and I can go in here and make changes. But I personally don't see this as an easy recipe. Like anytime I'm cooking fish, I would say that's at least medium, unless it's like fish fingers, you throw in the oven, wait 20 minutes, and it's done. So I can go right over here. I can change the recipe, change it to medium. You can see it shifts directly in line. I can make some changes. So it's already a Contentstack favorite. So I'll make it a Contentstack fan favorite. You can see it in here. I can save the change, and behind the scene that actually goes back into Contentstack regardless to where I made the changes from. So if I come right in here, you can see that the cardamom maple salmon was finished. You can see it's 8:33 here in California, 8:33 a.m. And if I go right in here, I can see that it's a medium level and it's a fan favorite. So regardless to where I'm working in the system or how I work, it all comes together to make it very simple for me as a content creator. It's always sort of at my fingertip. Cool. And then the last thing I want to show you guys, I like to start with something really cool. We started with like recipes from an awesome bottle of wine. We're going to jump in and think of like, where else can I put my content? Not just web, not just mobile. Let's think of an Alexa. Like, it's great. A lot of people have like Amazon Alexas in the kitchen or around the house. What if it could help you with the recipes? So I realized I need to update my screen share to give you guys audio as well. So let's share my sound. I'll go in and look at this recipe. So this is using a really cool tool called VoiceFlow. It actually lets us visually build together sort of a voice experience. You can see here all the different stuff, and we're gonna test it live. Let's take a second to load. We'll start the
What would you
training.
like to cook tonight?
And did you guys hear Alexa just now?
Yep.
Awesome, awesome. So we're gonna tell Alexa, I wanna cook salmon.
Let me find recipes with salmon. Let's cook the cardamom maple salmon together. Would you like to hear the recipe info, ingredients, or instructions?
Instructions.
What step are you on?
First.
Here's the first step. Stir salt, sugar, paprika, cardamom together in a bowl.
And we can compare that to the instructions right over here. And you can see right over here, same set of instructions. So all coming from one database. If I make changes here, just like I did on that last page, it'll flow onto my website, onto my mobile app, into Alexa. So really, really cool in terms of the experience managing content and then making it accessible to our website or application visitors anywhere in the world.
That's cool. So is it showing the list of ingredients? She told you what to mix. We've already seen the ingredients. Like, it's already shown how much cardamom, how much.
Yeah. So when I look at the Alexa, I can actually have different commands. So unlike on a website where you're seeing all the information together, an application like this, it's very interactive. So the first thing it was asking was, do I want to look at instructions, ingredients, or recipe information? I looked at instructions. So if I had said ingredients, it would have jumped in and told me sort of what are the different ingredients in the system. And of course, this is a little hard to demo because of the interface, but I can always ask again, like, hey, Alexa, what about the ingredients? It'll tell me all those pieces.
Now, can we get Alexa to come and cook our dinner for us?
I wish. That's maybe in 2022.
All right. That
awesome.
Is very cool.
Thank you. Let me hand it back to you, Kathy.
All right, thanks. Let me get back to sharing my screen. This is always the dodgy part, right? All right, we did the demo. All right, so that was fantastic. I mean, it's amazing the work that you guys have done alongside with Authentic in, keeping the purity of the content management element, the headless element, but then enabling that comfort zone for marketers and experienced creators to see what it's going to look like. So, to Chris's point, I'm not such a fan of the stack. So just making small tweaks and being able to see that right away that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see within Contentstack unto itself, I think is fantastic. So I'll just check in to see if we have any questions from the audience while I'm doing that. Maybe, from as we've mentioned, and I guess we're all getting a little tired of talking about the changes over the last 12 or 14 months and how it's thrown so many businesses into a tailspin digitally. What's the most common question you're seeing, Chris, when customers or prospects come to Contentstack and say, what do I need to change? Like, I've got a system, it's okay. Either what's their primary pain point that they're looking to you guys to solve, or what are they asking you is the most prudent thing that they're going to get out of a headless solution?
I'll answer this in probably 20 different ways.
Well, I think we only have a few more minutes, so maybe not 20. Maybe you can take it down to like 5.
Right. So oftentimes I'll hear like, what verticals do you focus in? And, you know, do you specialize in financial services? Is it retail? Is it CPG? Is it, you know, anything else? And invariably, it's really more about use cases than it is about any one particular vertical. There's nothing wrong with the approach of keeping static sites on more traditional monolithic platforms and using Contentstack to be able to serve up the content into those different channels for sites that need to be far more proactive and reactive. So when we look at organizations that have innovation teams, we tend to do really well there, particularly when we can do POCs, you know, with Authentic and show them the power of this experience. We do well there.
Proof of concept, POC, proof of concept.
Proof of concept. And when we look at organizations that have adopted this and done well, it's because they just need to get there faster and easier. And we've seen ticket times reduced where perhaps it was, you know, 4 weeks. Now that's being reduced down to 4 days. If you wanted to change content on a global level and have one single source of truth, instead of having 12 siloed teams that are responsible for each of those channels, and you want to centralize it and have the ability to distribute content across, you know, multiple orgs internally, we do really well there. I'm trying to keep it down to less than 20, but those organizations that know that they need to do something faster are where Contentstack stands out. And JM, what has been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that last point is a really good one. I think doing something faster, I think being able, and we mentioned a little bit of this earlier, these more innovative, either retail or, you know, financial services, banks, bigger brands that are looking to provide that more innovative experience or looking to provide that more personalized or dynamic experience that people are coming to expect from the sites that they're browsing on a daily basis. The Amazons, the Walmarts, those Nike, YouTube, you know, Google, those sorts of brands, being able to deliver that type of experience quickly with an ability to manage content while also surfacing really important functionality from old legacy technology that's been in place and is going to be in place. And I think what we're seeing is that organizations are not even realizing that they have the opportunity to deploy this in the fashion that they can, which allows them to get this to market faster because they're so used to the months and years that it's taken traditionally to deploy an enterprise content management system that ties that functionality and that content to a very specific front end experience as well. So all those things are really positive, and really it's about starting the conversation and understanding where does it make sense to start, because extending past those first couple of places that you put a solution like Contentstack in is actually very easy, as we've talked about earlier as well. Into some of the other aspects of the marketing platform.
Yep. And Kathy, to your point around how headless isn't for everyone, one aspect that does tend to get overlooked is change management, particularly, you know, inside, you know, these organizations where they've been accustomed to doing things a certain way for a decade, 15 years, using the same technology, perhaps different versions, and it's not for nothing. So it does require a visionary. Oftentimes inside of an organization who's able to help sell in why adopting a mock architecture is going to benefit them, because it comes back to the original point and how no developers get hurt in the creation of this content. It gives space for developers to work on innovative pieces of technology that can drive certain business results. And it allows for the business team, the editors and the content writers to be able to develop content that's going to help move the needle for them based on whatever their KPIs are. Right. So no longer do you have this dysfunction. You're allowing for experts to be experts. And that's the real value prop of Contentstack.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and a good one to wrap up on, because we want to stay on time for our listeners. Is, you know, from an organizational perspective, one of the things, and maybe this is the topic for our next webinar, is, getting aligned on what you're actually seeking to achieve. So looking at your customer journey, your CDJ, your customer decision journey, looking at your personas, looking at your content tech stack or MarTech stack, and understanding the pieces of the puzzle that you have, noticing any gaps that are missing, mapping those to how it's going to get delivered to the different stages and different steps within the customer journey. And it's almost a reverse engineering, right? So I think a lot of organizations that are really embracing headless are those that are truly, we all talk about it, but are truly putting the customer first, are truly making decisions based on the customers, not on what they want to tell people or what they want to share, or the products they want to deliver or the services they want to provide. They're really, taking a step back and saying, okay, who are our audiences? What do they want? And how do we best deliver the experiences in order to engage them? And I think headless is an incredible way of doing that, because to JM's point, it's enabling a leap forward, not just a step, but a leap in addressing that, because you don't have to change what's behind the scenes. You can keep what you have until you get, we talk about spaghetti code, but until you get the individual strands, or at least some of them, separated and understanding what's connected with what, a headless solution is going to enable a better delivery of experience, because it's not as concerned with that complicated backend layer. All right, yep. So thank you everyone for staying and listening to our banter today. Chris, JM, Gal, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. It was fantastic. I believe we will have the recording sent out to everyone in attendance, so you can listen to it over and over and over again. And thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone, from wherever you are, and we will talk to you soon. Cheers.